Every year since 1989, the Library of Congress has selected 25 films to add to the National Film Registry. The criteria? The films must be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Each week on You're Missing Out, we take a look at one of these films to try and get to the heart of why they were selected and why they still matter.
This week, Hunter Robinson joins us to talk about the film Lassie, Come Home. Our guest today is the host of Tumbleweeds and TV Cowboys. Hunter Robinson joins us today to talk about Lassie, Come Home. Hunter, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the madness. We're going to get real rollicking and wild with Lassie, Come Home.
Oh, I'm sure we will. It's a wild film.
I think this is so great. I talking to you a bit about this before we started, but I discovered your show, and I really enjoyed it. I really, one of the things we talk about here on our program is this idea of like not talking about if, but why these films matter, right? Not talking down to it, treating them like they matter, and the care with which you on your program put into all of the Western media you are discussing really appealed to me, and your willingness to get into the minutia. I can have nothing but respect for a podcast host who says, "God damn it, we will cover the John Wayne movies that nobody cares about. We will do it. We will commit to it, and we'll start early too.
Yes,
we will start early." I loved it. And I immediately was like, well, I want to get this guy on our show. However, the way that the timing worked out was, of course, all of the Westerns we had for this season were already booked by the time I was introduced to your show. So I basically had to go, here's some stuff outside your wheelhouse. Here's a list. So I appreciate you being willing to join us all the same, despite the fact that we had no Cowboys left by the time, we reached out. I appreciate it.
Oh, sure. Well, in general, I love classic Hollywood. Mm-hmm. So when I saw the list, I knew what I was going to pick because it's just this is what I grew up with. I mean, Westerns were a huge part of what I watched growing up, but also just Hollywood movies from like the 30s through the 50s in general. I grew up watching a ton of these.
So that leads to my next question. So when I sent you over the list, what was it that made Lassie Come Home stick out to you? What was the thing that made you go like, yes, plant my flag in Lassie Come Home?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it, I felt like it would maybe be... Now, you might hate this answer, but I think it might be one of the easier movies to talk about from the list, because there was some stuff that is pretty obscure, mm-hmm. that I feel like should be talked about, but I think that there are other people who would be better suited to discuss some of the other titles that were still available.
Yeah.
And I knew that this was, something I'm positive I saw this when I was a kid. So there's a little bit of nostalgia there. And I thought this is a movie that I feel like I can talk about and have a fun discussion on.
Well, so that's interesting because you said you're pretty sure you saw it as a kid. I guess that leads to, I'm going to toss this over. Tom, what is your, because Hunter, well, actually, when you say you think you saw this as a kid, Hunter, what is your familiarity with Lassie as a whole? Did you grow up with the show? Had you seen some of the other films? Like, how confident would you say you were that you had consumed Lassie media as opposed to just absorbed it through kind of cultural osmosis?
Yeah, well, I am positive that I've seen this and Courage of Lassie, mm-hmm. because my family, we actually watched a lot of Elizabeth Taylor movies. My grandparents and my dad in particular are big Elizabeth Taylor fans, so National Velvet and Father of the Bride were like huge movies for my family. I've seen those movies so many times. So I know that I've definitely seen this. And I've seen the Lassie TV series, but I would not be able to recall anything from any specific episode. I just know that it's something that was on at some point.
I mean, listen, if it makes you feel any better, I watched 2 episodes of the Lassie TV series this morning, and I don't feel confident I could recall exactly what happened in the episodes of the Lassie TV series. It's one of the only shows, though, that might be longer than Gunsmoke, which I believe you're covering on your show, because good Lord, Lassie ran for like 20 years. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, Gunsmoke ran for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the longest running like live action TV show for a long time. I think until one of the, I don't know, maybe Law and Order's the longest running now.
I think the mainstream Law and Order broke that record. I think before it was canceled and then brought back on Peacock or whatever as a 10 episode, which is just like, don't bring back Law and Order as a 10 episode a year thing. That's something that needs to be cranked out 25 episodes a year. You just throw it on in the background, and it's like, hey, which character actor did they have as one of the cops now?
If it's not helping half of New York get their SAG cards, is it really Law and Order? That's the real question.
I also love that era of Law and Order where they were just like, I think we've had enough New York cops. Let's just get Dennis Farina in as a cop. Yeah, so we're going down to investigate a murder homicide at the Bensonhurst Parkway, and you go, yeah, you're such a New York cop.
But in any event, Tom, what is your familiarity with Lassie? Had you seen anything Lassie before this, or was it something kind of? What is your Lassie awareness?
I have only just knowing the name Lassie. I can't even say cultural osmosis has informed anything about this movie because I just knew the name Lassie, and I was just like, well, what could this movie possibly be? There was a little worry, and like especially with the opening credits of like talking about the author dying in World War II and something, and I'm just like, oh, a twinge in me just started going like, oh, we about to get some Old Yeller type shit here where like it's a sad story about this great dog and like how it, I don't know, like inspired this kid to be a great man that would fight in wars and then write books about his dog. And then I'm just like, oh, please don't kill the goddamn dog. Please don't. Like, I know this is like a 90-minute movie, and I love watching 90-minute movies, especially for this show. It makes the homework go down so much smoother, but it's like, fuck, man, it's like 11 in the morning. I'm like kind of like in between work assignments. So like, don't make me finish this movie, go back to work, and be like, man, I just watched a great dog fucking die. Please. So like when Mike is telling me all this
you were waiting for Fess Parker to just show up with the rifle.
Straight up, I was literally just like, is the dog gonna die? Like make it back home, but like succumb to its wounds. Like what's that? Fuck, I always forget the name, but I actually liked it. That Defoe movie that was on Disney Plus, but it just
Togo.
I was kind of worried it was going to be like that, and like even in my mind, knowing it wouldn't happen, but like the dog gets home, and then the music from the Thin Red Line starts playing, and you're just like, oh, the last days of this dog, and I'm like, no. But yeah, I have. Even still, I can honestly say, having watched this movie and enjoyed it, being like, I have no idea how this is a media billion-dollar industry with like 1 million episodes of TV, 1 million movies, books, and all of this shit. I'm like, how? I love dogs, but also, what is any of this? I don't get it.
So I would say, to add on to what you're saying, Tom, you have absorbed something through cultural osmosis. I think we all have, but it's not related to this movie, which is because we're all, or at least Tom and I, old school Conan fans and all of that. The stereotype of Lassie is what's that girl? Little Timmy fell down a well, which is from that TV series.
Okay,
this whole idea of like the magical miracle dog, right? And so for me, I will admit, like, I absorbed Lassie through cultural osmosis primarily. There was a Lassie remake in the 90s that I remember came out, and it kind of like revived interest in Lassie for like kids. But for me, Lassie fell into this chasm. I don't know if you guys had this experience. I've had it with a couple things, which is like your parents grew up with stuff. And, your parents always try and expose you to the stuff they grew up with, but they sometimes just assume you already saw it because they did, right? Like, we're going to talk about it next season with E.T. I had that with E.T. where like I did not actually see E.T. until I was 15 years old, but we had so much E.T. merchandise in the house, at my parents' house, at my grandmother's house, because every adult was just like, E.T., kids love E.T. You're a kid. You know who E.T. is. Here's E.T. stuff. And at no point did anybody stop and go, have you seen this movie? No one asked. It was just like, you're a kid. You know E.T. You love E.T. Lassie was one of those where it was like when the new movie was coming out, I remember like, there was a Blockbuster, the VHS tape. My mom's just like, you've seen Lassie. I don't need to get the new Lassie. You've seen Lassie. Had never seen Lassie. It was just assumed. And again,
No,
so I
I
observed.
don't.
Yeah.
I don't get that. I didn't get that with my parents. I get that more now with people who are just like, oh, you're the movie guy, so you obviously must have seen this. And sometimes I go, yeah, I've seen that. And sometimes I'm like, no, man, I'm sorry that there's like 10,000 movies released a year. I literally cannot see every movie. Some of my favorite those are when I'm like at a bar and clearly like the dumbest guy in the bar just decides to start talking to me. He's like, oh man, you like movies? Because I always got a movie hat and a movie shirt on. He's like, you like movies, man? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I got this movie for you, man. It's really like a deep cut. And then I'm like, okay, what are you about to drop on me? He's like, have you ever seen Van Wilder, bro? And I'm just like,
yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, no, yes, I have seen that. The movie that made $1 billion at the box office. Yes.
Yeah. So, but I say all that to say, I think it's interesting, Hunter, that you actually, were watching this film, as a child because of the Elizabeth Taylor of it all and all of that. So did you find yourself when you were encountering maybe people like us who kind of, again, absorbed it through cultural osmosis, ever kind of wanting to go like, this character isn't quite what it's cliched as? You know what I mean? Like, isn't really just like a dog that rescues kids from wells. Did you ever find that as this thing became kind of this culturally ubiquitous piece of iconography?
I don't think so. And I think within my friend group growing up, classic movies were not a part of their lives the way they were a part of my life. Mm-hmm. And so they were more absorbing stuff that was coming out currently. And so I don't even remember like having to reference this. Like actually, when you sent the list over, it was the first time I had thought about Lassie in probably decades.
Again, I mentioned in the 90s because, and I'll get into this as we get into the film, but I watched a documentary today that was the story of Lassie. And it was one of those incredible, I talk on the show a lot of my love for what I call creaky park films. When you go to like a National Historic Site and it's always just wonky, warped music from the 70s. And second to that in my heart are those Time Life Hollywood history documentaries where like the score is a French horn and it always begins with some older woman going, for over 50 years, Lassie has entertained audiences of all ages. It was one of those, and it was clearly building up to like, we're in production on a new Lassie for the 90s. And there's this old man talking about the film he's working on going, oh, it's important that we try and reach the children of today with Lassie. The boy in our film, he's a child of the 90s. He's always got his headphones in, listening to his MTV. And I'm like, I don't think you're going to reach the kids of today. If that's how you're viewing it, is listening to his MTV. But God bless you.
That sounds like a great documentary.
It is on, would you believe me if I told you, it is 60 minutes long and on Tubi.
That's perfect.
Oh, what a thing. And it kind of gives the overview of all of the films as well, which I thought was helpful because I will admit, I did not have time to watch all 7 theatrical Lassie films. Don't worry, I made time to watch the last one, The Painted Hills, where Lassie goes out for revenge, because how can you pass that up?
Well, listen, this is a dog that, this dog throws hands in this movie.
Yes.
And knows how to scrap. So going out for revenge is not as big a stretch as you would imagine.
Truly, it's as Mystery Science Theater summed up that film. Lassie's back and she's pissed. We love it.
Hey, I would not fuck with Lassie, like straight up.
No,
Two hooligans in the woods try to fuck with Lassie's current food distributor, and they get what for?
I mean, listen. I would also try and kill a man if they hurt Toots, but we'll get into that.
Yes.
All of that.
They hurt Toots.
I know.
They fucking croquet mallet that little bastard across the forest and kill him. I was like, whoa! They kill Toots. What the fuck, man? Get their ass. Get them. Rip their throats out. End their bloodline.
Before we get any further, this is a much more off the rails show than I'm sure you're used to, Hunter.
Yes.
I'm so used to just like your program, which is much more polite. If at any point he gets really out of line, you let us know. We can't stop him, but we'll at least know.
Oh, and if I get offended, I'm just leaving.
Oh, to 50-50, We'll ride that line.
So before we get any further into this and what we thought about Lassie Come Home, let's hear what the National Film Registry had to say. Here's what the Library of Congress said about Lassie Come Home.
Lassie Come Home. Young Joe, Roddy McDowell, is distraught when his father, an unemployed English coal miner, Donald Crisp, is forced to sell Joe's beloved collie Lassie, whose real name was Pal, to pay the rent. The buyer, Nigel Bruce, takes Lassie home to Scotland and his daughter, Elizabeth Taylor. But after several attempts, Lassie manages to escape and sets out on a perilous journey back to Joe. New York Times reviewer Bosley Crowther noted that the story is told with such poignance and simple beauty that only the hardest heart can fail to be moved. This is the first and what many consider to be the best of several generations of Lassie movies and television programs, which were adapted from novels by Eric Knight. The film's rich color cinematography that captures the lush countryside was nominated for an Academy Award.
So they mention Roddy McDowell, Donald Crisp. That is one of the things that did kind of throw me when I watched this for the first time. Before I watched the film, I actually read the original Eric Knight novel. It was originally a short story, and then it became a novel. And it hews relatively close to the novel, but I have to admit the one thing I was not expecting was that when it came time to make the film Lassie Come Home, the producers simply went, "Did you guys see how green was my valley?
Mm-hmm.
Can we put the dog in that?" Was very jarring. Like, Roddy McDowell alone, but then Donald Crisp shows up, and it's still about like, "Oh, it's hard finding work these days." You're like, okay, so we really did we just said that. Let's just do that, but again, and now with a dog. I was a little surprised. I don't know about you guys, but...
No, the one that threw me was... Is that the Bride of Frankenstein?
Yes.
Yes.
Because she had one of those careers where it was almost like it's talked about like, oh, she kind of like really didn't do much after the Bride of Frankenstein. So anytime I see her pop up in something, it was like, when Mike, you told me to watch Witness for a Prosecution. And I'm like, Is that the Bride of Frankenstein? What is that? She's done other things. So seeing her in this, I was just like, what? Is this allowed? Is it's not black and white, and she's not trying to die because she was created to be a wife of a monster? This is interesting.
To this day, it throws me off when I'm watching Mary Poppins, and I'm just like, well, that doesn't. What do you mean you're here too? What's going on?
She's in that too.
I
haven't seen that movie in ages. Wow. Oh. Wow.
But yeah, I was struck by that, and in a way, and Hunter, obviously, this is also your oeuvre to speak to, but like. I did find myself, maybe it was just the Donald Crisp and Roddy McDowell of it all, but I did find myself kind of feeling some John Ford in this movie. Not, up to the caliber of Ford's filmmaking, but almost like, when we watched programs meant for, children in like the 80s, 90s, and they were like, well, we're going to try and replicate this style or this energy, but for kids. It did feel like this movie was like, can we make a John Ford movie for kids. I don't know if you felt that, but to me, I was struck by that.
Yeah, I can see that because John Ford is definitely has a sentimentality to him. Now this is taken to like way more of an extreme.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one line early on in the movie is there's a character who I don't think shows up again in the movie who says something along the lines of, if ever there was a greater dog, it must have been before I was born. Like a greater dog in Yorkshire, you know, and it's kind of just this absurd, like Lassie is like almost a superhero. Like, and like how the way the whole town knows that he's going to be on time when Roddy McDowall's character gets out of school, and the way they like celebrate it and are in awe of it is, I think is like kind of amusing. And I appreciate how far they go with the sentimentality. And I'm trying to think of other ways of other like John Ford-esque qualities I see in it. Even just the way they shoot on location. I'm going to say like natural environments, I think could even be seen. It could even be considered as being sort of John Ford-esque.
Oh, the way they shoot vistas in the outdoors is very Ford.
Mm-hmm.
The sentimentality, as you said, is definitely cranked up because it doesn't end up with some like sort of melancholy feeling the way a lot of Ford's movies or you know, like, oh, we saved Natalie Wood, but you know, John Wayne's in the doorway and he's never going to be able to come in, or Man Who Shot Louis Valance, what have you. But I think anybody that's owned a dog or dogs in their life watches this movie and they're like, yeah, no, that's just what we feel. That's just how it feels owning a dog. Like, yeah, this is the greatest dog ever. Everybody loves my dog. This is the best thing in the world. And I think the other main Ford quality is there is a sense of like playful rowdiness to this movie at points where, you know, we referenced the thieves towards the end of the movie where things get a little heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Also the scene where like some guy just wants to shoot the dog because it's near his sheep, and I'm just like, okay, guy, take it easy. Lassie's not going to do anything to your sheep. But then like the opening bits and just the stuff with the rich guy who's just always just verbally abusing the guy who runs the kennel on his property just feels very John Fordy. There's just when Mike texted me like it feels like a Ford movie for kid, I was just like, oh right, yeah, no, you know what, that is exactly what this feels like. This is honestly kind of exactly why I'm connecting to the movie more than the dog element of it, because, you know, I mean, there's been a lot of dog movies in 10, 15 years where it's like, this dog keeps dying and resurrected as another dog. Do you want to see a dog die over and over? And I'm just like, not really. That seems a little callous and cruel to me, but okay. It shockingly, like, you know, it does feel like a real movie, which did throw me for not knowing anything and just like, oh, it's John Ford Jr. Let's go. I'm into this. And also there's little Roddy McDowall.
And even like when I'm talking, you know, some of the stuff that struck me is feeling like what those little touches. Like, Tom, you mentioned the moment of them trying, you know, the one guy wanting to shoot Lassie, you know, because, oh, well, they're near the sheep, you get money. It's the little touch of having the other guy say, well, you know, I couldn't have shot the dog anyway. I hadn't loaded my rifle. Oh, you were always forgetting. And then just showing him very little, like, we're not closing up on it. We're not making a meal of it, but just showing him take the bullet out of the rifle.
Yeah.
You know, is such, and that to me was like, those are the little touches in those John Ford movies you love of like, even these ancillary characters can be given this little slice of humanity, you know, which really hit me.
Also the fact that the guy named his dog Satan, which is just like, okay. I mean, guys, you're maybe playing it a little too hard on this is a guard dog for sheep and it will kill you, but you know what? Yeah. Lassie came in, mollywopped that dog. Satan, not today.
Lassie quite literally defeated Satan, and don't worry, in the sequel, he fights Nazis. Dead on in Son of Lassie, he fights Nazis.
I don't mean
Nazi dogs. I mean, there's at the climax of. I'm just gonna dip in a sec. The Son of Lassie is about one of the pups, who grows up to be Laddie, not Lassie. Lassie is the name of the actor. Lassie, in fact, plays different dog names in all of these sequels. They're not actually... Lassie, a character, does not exist in the sequels. Like, in the Painted Hills, it's a dog named Shep. It's Laddie, but for some reason... Like, Lassie is just the actor. It would be like if you went to see Gone with the Wind, and they called it Clark Gable's Civil War. It's like, it's the name of the actor, not the character. But in Son of Lassie... Lassie befriends a man who is a World War II fighter pilot and goes on the plane with them. And the plane is shot down over Norway. And Lassie gets separated from his owner. Unfortunately, Lassie is so devoted to his owner that the Nazis realize we can use this dog to sniff out the American in our prison camp. And so they let Lassie go in a prison camp, and Lassie immediately runs to his owner, and the Germans are like, great, let's take him out and shoot him. And this Colonel Klink-esque Nazi officer is about to shoot the guy, and Lassie charges into action and mauls a Nazi. This is where they go in movie 2.
See,
lest you found the propaganda elements of Lassie Come Home too subtle. By part 2... they're going for it.
Now you're telling me this, and I think the proper way to reboot the Lassie franchise for modern audiences is to basically do the dog fight scene from John Wick 3 and just have one of those dogs be like, "Oh, this is Lassie," but then gets revenge, and you just get Lassie getting into John Wick style dog fights.
Well, I mean, just to put a button on that, because I teased this before, I took a photo of my television. It's not a great quality because I couldn't find the image online as it is. But Kyle, can you go ahead and just pull up that image I labeled Lassie D-Day? I just want everyone to process what I saw. And just, again, because the Lassie franchise is almost like the Hellraiser franchise, where if you remember, after Hellraiser 2, the studio was just like, do we have a script? Any script? Do you have a cop thriller, whatever? We'll put Pinhead in it. The Lassie franchise is
on the internet?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. He's on the internet now. Okay.
The Lassie franchise is very much them going like, what scripts do we have that vaguely involve a dog? That dog is Lassie now. One of them is just Greyfriars Bobby, but with Lassie. But so I saw that image pop up in the documentary and was just struck by this image that just begs the question, who allowed this? I don't even mean at the studio. People. I don't even mean at the studio. I just mean in the world of the movie. What general was like, you know who we really need on the beaches of Normandy? We need a collie.
People with good taste.
And again, I think all of this, to what we were talking about up top, I understand the movie is a little over the top in certain elements, but like, this is still a pretty reserved movie compared to, as you said before, Hunter, like Lassie becoming a superhero down the line.
Yeah.
Lassie still does some impressive things, but this is at its core a somewhat grounded tale.
Yeah, definitely. What's funny is I enjoy movies where people or characters are in some kind of peril that feels like legitimate. And so part of me, when I was watching this, I was picturing like the come and see filmmaking approach to a Lassie movie, and like how heroic. I mean, it would be totally cruel to do this to an animal, obviously. But in Russia, they do it to a child, which I feel like is probably worse. But I was just thinking when you were talking about a new Lassie, I wonder if when Lassie's going into the public domain, because I think at that point you can do like Winnie the Pooh. There's like a slasher franchise.
Oh yeah, we're totally gonna get one of those public domain horror movies, and that's gonna make Mike walk off a pier.
Thankfully, we are spared for about another decade at least.
Okay.
Because Lassie is first published in 1941,
Hmm.
which is ironically, the book is published the same year How Green Was My Valley comes out as a film. But Lassie published in 1941. I believe the works of 1931 are going to hit the public domain in 2026. So we are spared another decade, right? And, you know, Tom, you were saying, yeah, if it happened right now, I'd want to walk off a plank. But, you know, in 10 years, I'm going to be worried more about my Lipitor prescription or something. Like, you know, I'll be a middle-aged Italian man. Like, I've got bigger worries at that point.
Let's be honest. Genuinely surprised that's not something you're worried about right now.
I'll see. You know, honestly, a decade from now, we'll still be planning this goddamn wedding. But who knows? It's all been fun right now. Being in your mid-30s rules, folks. Check it.
Great.
Try it out.
Getting old is awesome. There's nothing better than getting old and realizing you're just a walking pile of rotting meat.
Which is also kind of like, you know, I don't know. I've thought about this a lot. I'm not trying to get too abstract here with this, but like I've thought about a lot, like as I'm getting older, you know, wanting to not be completely childish, but wanting to still hold on to your understanding of what it's like to be a young child, right? Wanting to still know how to relate to younger people. And I say that because up until a certain point in this movie, I'm sympathetic to the parents. I don't think they should have sold the dog, but I'm sympathetic. We're in the middle of an economic depression. You know, times are hard. You got to put food on the table. But I will admit, as a, you know, I'm not a parent. I'm not going to pretend I fully understand. But if I sold my child's beloved dog, I do not think that I could make up for it by buying him a very nice pencil. That's just me. Again, I'm not a parent.
What, you know, this kid is pathologically obsessed with this dog. Desperately wants this dog back. Why would you do, we've got a surprise for you? And he's like, of course he's going to think Lassie's back. Why would he ever think about a pencil? He's only thinking about this dog.
It's
And
horrible, cruel.
What child has ever appreciated a school supply as a gift? None.
I mean, I get it. It's like early 1900s Europe. You know, not much goodies abound there. It's a depression and all of that. But like, you know, the kids expected the dog. Even if any other day a brand new spanking pencil and a pencil case would have got this kid running through the walls like the Kool-Aid Man. Not now. Not after you sold his dog and the dog escaped and came back and you sent the dog back again. No. Horrible. Absolutely. Where is child services? Unacceptable.
I mean, I got to be honest. Well, I mean, it's a little later at this point. We're in like the 1930s, 1940s England. But, you know, let's face it. England at the turn of the century, child services was just somebody going, still alive, huh? All right. Good on you. We're out. I will say one of the things with this, and one of the things with this film that, again, really kind of struck me is that the film starts as, you know, this back and forth like we alluded. Lassie is sold. Lassie digs under the fence, returns home. Lassie is, sold, jumps over the fence, right? And you think this is going to be the interplay. Some of that is us, or at least me today, which is like your brain is still triggered to kind of, or wired to still go, well, if Elizabeth Taylor's in this movie, she's going to be a huge part of it, despite the fact that she is not Elizabeth Taylor yet. But your brain just,
right.
But you think this is going to be the dynamic of the story, right? And as I texted Tom, it's an interesting film because it's like 50% How Green Was My Valley, and then becomes 50% kind of The Revenant, almost. Like you're not expecting, it to become The Incredible Journey. Right?
Yeah.
And to me, I don't know about you guys, but like something shifts when we see Lassie's bloody paw print on the rock. Like,
that's heavy.
because again, I talk about like the Disney film, The Incredible Journey. Like we've all seen like films of like, oh, an animal makes a long trip, but this does kind of have. This is a weird phrasing, but this kind of a kid-friendly brutality to it in a way. Of
Yeah.
like,
There's stakes to it, which is
Yeah.
I feel like we've talked about this. Maybe I don't know on the show, but I definitely in text or whatever that I joke around that kids movies today need to go back to traumatizing kids, and not to
Yes.
say that this is like one of the 80s movies or whatever where it's like, oh, it's not like Gremlins, but there is a sense of danger, there is a sense of stakes. It's something that I joked about the movies where it's like, oh, let's just kill a dog over and over and it's reincarnated, but those movies never have the level of emotionality or brutality or just stakes to them. Like it tries to have it both ways, where this movie really does, like, it gets you invested in not just the dog but the relationship to Roddy McDowall, and even what I think is a brilliant and pretty much accurate depiction of a household with a dog, where the dad is the one that has to be like, well, I got to go sell the dog, but then the dad's really upset and the mom's got to be the one that's the hard ass, and it's just like,
Yeah.
well, no, we had to sell the dog, and ba 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 ba, and the dad's just sitting in the corner by the fireplace looking like he's about to burst into tears, and he's just like, well, that's it, get my hat, I have to go for a walk. It's like, oh, look, you just made your dad cry. It's just like, that's how dog families are. Oh, I don't want the dog, and then the dad becomes the best friend of the dog in the world. Yeah, it's one of those things where I know this isn't a Disney movie of that era, but I kind of joke about that era of Disney movies, because that seems to be Mike's only cinematic diet when he's not doing homework for this show. But I do got to give them credit, and a movie like this credit, and it's part of the reason why I did like this movie, is that it has stakes. It's never going to make you feel like 1980s Savini gore is about to burst into the scenes, but it's like, no, like, you do worry, like the blood on the stones, or when she jumps out of the window towards the end and she starts limping and hides behind the fence, and you're like, oh my god, is this dog gonna die? What the hell? Like, what is this? And then we see the little dog get kicked across the forest. We see a guy get robbed. Lassie gets into a brutal fight where she ends up basically bloody and like on the verge of death in front of this old couple's home, and it's this incredible balancing act, man, of it's never going to go too hard, but you're never sure if it's not going to go too hard, and you got to give it all the credit in the world for that, if anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and one thing, we kind of haven't really touched too much on the quality of the performances, but like Roddy McDowall, I think was 14 when they shot this, or maybe 15, but he's amazing in it. I mean, the scene where he finds out they sold Lassie, his crying is, I mean, those are real tears, and there's like drool coming out of his mouth at one point.
Yeah.
It's like, he is fantastic in it. And he's got to, like, it's got to be one of the best, like from that era, like, child actors aren't the most, they don't work from within. These aren't like miniature Sean Penns or whatever. But I think he is just terrific in this.
Well, and I think one of the reasons that performance works so well is, again, in this silly little documentary I watched, they interview Roddy McDowall, and he talked about, he goes, the reason I was able to work on that film, he goes, and looking back, it surprised him. He goes, is that I really viewed the dog as a fellow actor. He goes, the way that this dog performed, I felt the same kinship with him in scenes that I did with the other human actors. He goes, and I'd worked with other animals, and that wasn't the case. It was an animal doing a trick, but he goes, I really felt like I connected with this dog. He goes, and it just allowed me to unlock something. And I think you hear that from a lot of people who worked with Pal, the dog that would be called Lassie. Because they interview other people, Margaret O'Brien, Janet Leigh, they have quotes from like Elizabeth Taylor, and they all did talk about the fact that like this dog was so not just well trained, but like had such a way of connecting on an emotional level with these performers that they really did feel like they were working with a scene partner. I mean, Janet Leigh talks about with a bit of a joking, but she's like, when I started working with Lassie, I was the rookie, and Lassie was the veteran on set, and I really did unintentionally kind of find myself looking to Lassie for how to be on a set. This. So I think, in a way, what Rudd Weatherwax, not to take credit away from Pal the dog, but what Rudd Weatherwax had been able to get out of this dog in a way that there were dog stars before Lassie, there was Rin Tin Tin, there was
Mhm.
Strongheart, but they were trained dogs, right? To do tricks and such. And Rudd Weatherwax never wanted he basically never wanted the dog to do tricks. He wanted to get the dog to give the performance necessary for the scenes in the film, but it was never about doing tricks. And as a result, I genuinely think it made it easier for these actors to buy into the idea of this dog in the movie, this dog is special because they were seeing something special on that set.
Oh, I mean, it definitely doesn't hurt. I mean, the dog is amazing, but got to give credit to the actors just in general because there's a reason why Roddy McDowall had such a long lasting career and why
Mhm.
honestly he was so good as he got older working in the genre stuff, doing stuff like the Planet of the Apes movies under heavy makeup, and even doing stuff in his older years like the Fright Night movies where
Yeah.
he can sell and buy into these fantastical things that are happening because he's just a good actor and is able to buy into it and not look his nose down upon it. And I think there's a little level of there's a theatrical training while having a realistic performance style, because if you train on the stage you have to be able to buy into essentially acting to nothing while acting in front of people but pretending you're acting to something, and all of those people aren't there. So like I know there's so much complaints nowadays, and sometimes rightfully so, about the CGI green screen filming style of today, and it's like, oh, we can't really latch on to anything. And I go, yeah, I get it, but at the same time you do the same thing on stage. So there's the not again, it's like give credit to the dog, give credit to the dog's trainer, but also give credit to these actors because what are they, six more movies after this, like you said, how many different episodes of a TV show were they all giving these kinds of performances? um it's while I would never say this is one of my favorite movies I've ever seen, but it's one of the movies you would use as an example, I think, as the amazing magic trick that cinema is. Because everyone says don't make movies with kids, don't make movies with animals,
Mhm.
because kids, you have the short work hours and they got to do their homework on sets, blah blah blah, all of that. Don't work with animals because again, they're animals, as well trained as they can be, they're animals. And a lot of movies you got to use multiple animals to play the same performance. Oh, this dog runs, this dog barks, this one does this. So you have all of those elements. You have this story that is hokey, not in a bad way. It's a hokey movie, very
Yeah.
sentimental, very very up in your face about what it's trying to elicit from you. But you show it to people, and you go, "This is why movies are everlasting." I feel why they still, as much as the industry's in a weird spot and all of this, why people still watch movies, because yeah, you had books, you had all this stuff, but watching this and knowing the hard work that went into this and that it worked, that for what year is this? 41, 43?
43.
43, yeah.
Okay, so a 1943 movie. You know there's no CGI. You know there's no wire work. You know there's no real trickery other than just cutting to the right spots. And I mean, it's the kind of thing that almost reinvigorates you of just, right, we can do quite literally anything with a movie as long as you have the ingenuity and the right people. I know I'm rambling a lot, but that's mainly because I'm thinking of all of this stuff in the moment. Mike knows this about me. I tend
No
to
notes.
try.
He takes
I
no
try.
notes.
I try it because all of this stuff is just in my head, and it's like free jazz. So it just kind of like I just start connecting all the dots and figuring it out as we go. But
I swear to God,
I just
for a minute, I thought you were going to say it's like Free Jack, and I'm like, how? How is it like the
listen. Listen.
Mick
Give me
Jagger,
give me a day or two. Let me rewatch Free Jack. I'll get back to you. But yeah.
Now, I
no,
do think I want to jump on what you said, Tom, to
stuff.
talk about that. Like, I think one thing, and obviously, Hunter, you deal in your podcast with westerns a great deal. In most of those cases, well, not most, but in a number of those cases, when you do the history of, or look into the production history of westerns, especially from like the 30s and 40s, you do sit back and go, okay, how many horses died? Like, you just kind of have to roll with that. It's remarkable that this film is made with, as Tom alluded, like, normally these films have like dogs that are trained, one's trained to run. This film is made with one dog.
Yeah.
That does all of this, the swimming, all of it, and is fine. That no harm comes to this dog. It's the kind of movie that if you watched, like if somebody just showed you Lassie Come Home, and if you're, an old film fan, you would just sit back and go, I really don't want to look up what happened to this dog. And instead, you look into it and you're like, was one of MGM's top contract players, lived a rich and fulfilling life, had an endorsement deal with a dog food. We'll touch on that later. I've got some background. That is, you're going to think I'm crazy. That is the one family connection I have to Lassie. We'll touch on it.
I'm looking forward to that.
In fact, speaking of MGM, Kyle, can you bring up a photo I pulled called MGM Cast? So this is a photo of all of MGM's top contract players from, I believe, the year 1948, 1949. And if you take a look, you're going to see a lot of familiar actor faces, but front and center on this photo in the Nicholson Shining spot is Lassie. Like, the fact that Lassie was just, by this point, by the end of the 40s, Lassie was just another star on the roster. That this dog was so just well trained and was bringing in so much money. And to zoom out a little bit, an interesting thing about this, because we talked about like the multi-million-dollar franchise of this, right? The massive franchise of this. So much so they're still making Lassie content. There is a like 2-season long animated Lassie show on Paramount Plus. There was a Lassie anime. That's 100% real. It was a Lassie anime. There's so much Lassie stuff. Part of the reason for that is, it comes down to Red Weatherwax, who was Lassie's trainer, being one of the shockingly smartest people in Hollywood for this, which is, so Lassie Come Home is a hit. They want to make more Lassie. Lassie Come Home is like a subtle propaganda film. Roddy McDowall does call it a propaganda film because he says it's about a nation of stalwarts, right? And how this film is a metaphor for the wartime experience, right? And I think, in the same way that we talked about this on Shane, but like Shane's not really about a cowboy. Shane's about, hey kids, your dad came back from Iwo Jima and he ain't doing too well. Lassie Come Home is kind of the same thing of like, hey kids, I bet it feels weird that somebody you care about is across the water and you don't know if they're gonna come back. There's that wartime element to it.
Mm-hmm.
The next batch of films get more propagandistic. They become more about the war. Like I said, Lassie fights Nazis. Lassie may have saved Private Ryan. They keep looking for films to make. By 1951, they make a film called The Painted Hills that is, like I said, deranged. It's a mystery science theater movie. MGM decides we're done making Lassie movies, right? Tastes are changing. People want stuff that's more grounded, and a dog that does cool stuff is not going to land. So they go to Rudd Weatherwax and they go, listen, I know we have a contract with you. We want to give you $40,000 to buy you out. And he says, no, I don't want any money. What I want is you give me the rights to the Lassie name and the Lassie franchise. And MGM went, great. We don't care. Take it. What else are you going to do with Lassie? What, are people just going to have a magical box in their home where they watch movies every week? Get out of town, pal. And so Rudd Weatherwax proceeds to make the massively successful Lassie television show and keep the franchise going.
So that's that era's version of Lucas being able to keep the rights to Star Wars?
Yeah.
Yes. I was shocked by this because I assumed it was something of like, the studio wanting it, but no, it's Rudd Weatherwax has the foresight to kind of go like, no, there's something here if we keep it going. Now, as for the endorsement deal, I can speak to this a bit because I will say when I was out with my parents this past weekend, and I mentioned we're doing Lassie on the show, and my father proceeded to tell me that his Uncle Neil knew Lassie's trainer, Rudd Weatherwax.
Whoa!
And I know. This is, and
royalty.
You would be, and yet I can't get my foot in the door in this industry. It's crazy. You would think with those credentials,
I mean, you're essentially Wyatt
he'd be
Russell.
beating down my door.
See, the Nepo baby argument isn't a real thing, obviously.
So he said, he sent me over this article that they had pulled about this because Neil had supposedly gotten this recipe from Rudd Weatherwax of this food that Lassie ate because Lassie was very healthy, and apparently Neil was able to replicate this recipe and give it to my dad's childhood dog. And then my dad's childhood dog didn't want to eat anything that they had at their house because this was so good. But I just want to read you guys, if I may, a little bit of this article from I think it's 1971. So this is one of the descendants of Lassie. Lassie, the estimable collie, has long looked down her aristocratic nose at endorsing products or making commercials. This demeaning practice, albeit economically rewarding, was better left to athletes, struggling movie and TV stars, and other inferior species. Over the years since 1942, when the canine became a star with Elizabeth Taylor and Lassie Come Home, rude to Roddy McDowell, but still, the dog and her trainer, Rudd Weatherwax, have been approached regularly to endorse dog food products. Her paw print on a contract was worth as much as a Borscht franchise in Moscow or the salami cartel in Rome. We really knew how to write articles in
the
the
salami
70s.
cartel. Oh my God. Is that the next season of Narcos?
No, Tom, I'll be honest, Tom, the salami cartel is what my future in-laws call us, quite frankly, when they hear about our podcast. They're just like,
oh, that is 100% what they're going to call me when they see me at the wedding.
At the wedding. But Weatherwax was unable to pick up a small fortune by accepting any of the dozen of pet food company contracts because, in truth, Lassie did not savor any of their products. You see, said Weatherwax, during all the years with the various Lassies, we've served the dogs a special stew fixed by my wife. It contains good beef along with carrots, onion, peas, celery, and tomatoes. It was really an Irish stew without the potatoes. Then we'd add kibble and serve it to Lassie and our other dogs. They thrived on it. Their coats and eyes were bright, and it was good enough for human consumption. I've tasted it without the kibble, and it's really good. So there's more to it, but I just want to stress two things about that. One, Lassie endorsing a dog food was big enough news it was profiled in the newspaper. But second, it's tough because, Lassie, a dog, and we love Lassie, but it's not like Lassie was not necessarily benefiting from the stardom so much, but it's good to know Lassie did on the regular eat better than any of us did in college. I just want to note that.
Well, and also if you think about it, post-war, this is 1940s, eating better than like 75% of the country.
Yeah.
That is kind of, it's true. I didn't think of it that way. People in the
Also,
nation are rationing.
You
And
want
they're
to even
like,
you want an even darker way to think about it?
no, I
1943.
don't. I do not. I do not.
It's a lot of
I do
people
not.
camped
Yeah.
out in the Europe.
Yep.
That's
Yeah, it's rough. It's
yeah.
well, especially for Lassie. Like,
Yeah.
because the other thing too is like you kind of forget that Lassie originates in Europe,
yeah.
right? Because the TV
Yeah, that's
show
something
is
I was
American.
surprised. Well, I didn't know that the TV show. Because I didn't know anything. I just assumed it was an American thing. So when it starts off in what, Cornwallis
Or Yorkshire?
Yorkshire,
Yeah.
and then shifts to Scotland, and that's the Trek Scotland to Yorkshire. I'm just like, oh, I mean, I guess I should have figured with the opening crawl, but like, still kind of shocking. You think it's such an American thing, and because it's an American franchise, and it's such an American thing to be like, well, what if instead of paying humans, the star was a dog? And you go, yeah, that's a good way to cut costs. Okay, I get it. Good job.
It's crazy too, though, because again, like, this is the wartime. They're trying to inspire us. They're trying, and so many movies. And Hunter, you were talking about like growing up with a lot of those films from like the 30s to the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy how many movies from the 40s that are classic films you don't remember have essentially, like, sometimes explicitly a tacked on title card, as though to go like, here's why we're showing this to you now.
Yes.
Or like, where it's literally as though in like 1943 you needed permission to go see a distracting film. Like, we're going to be covering, we haven't done it yet, but like Yankee Doodle Dandy later this season, and even that goes kind of out of its way to go, now, in case you didn't pick up on this, the music of George M. Cohan in World War I could be very helpful to us now in World War II. And if you don't believe us, an actor playing FDR is going to explain that for 5 minutes up top. So I was surprised watching this, too, that it has the title card not just about Eric Knight, but saying, like, and Eric Knight, he not only fought in World War I, he fought in World War II, this time as an American. So odd.
Yeah, honestly, didn't even think about it. I didn't even think about it, but it's like, oh yeah, that is such an American thing. I'm just like, oh yes, fighting in the war is so great, but what's even better, doing it as an American. Eat Snacky Smalls.
Just like as though it was like, listen, in case you feel bad that you spent 90 minutes watching a film about Yorkshire, do not worry. Don't worry. He fought for America. So this is, you don't feel guilty. You're good. It's fine.
Yeah, there's something about that title card at the beginning that I feel like it kind of tells the audience, like, hey, yes, you are seeing, this is a boy and his dog movie, and you might look down upon this, but because of this information you're getting right up front, you do have to like this. It's not really a choice.
I kind of wish, imagine if, like, when you sat down to go see Thunderbolts, they just ran a title card that said, just so you know, one of the writers of this, he fought in Afghanistan. Just know that.
Well,
before you judge this, he did.
Well, it's funny. We know one of the most famous examples of kind of doing that is one of the most famous examples of blowing up in the filmmaker's face. This film is dedicated to the brave Mujahideen fighters. Did you know about this, about the ending of Rambo 3, Hunter?
No.
At the end,
Rambo 3... Oh, go ahead.
Rambo 3 is about him going to Afghanistan to help them fight off the Russians, which we now know with hindsight is he's helping what eventually becomes Al-Qaeda, but at the time they were the Mujahideen fighters, so the movie ends with, this film is dedicated to the brave Mujahideen fighters, but after, some antics on Al-Qaeda's part, the filmmakers went, we need to take this out of all future prints and home video releases of this movie, because we cannot end this movie thanking the guys who blew up the Twin Towers.
You can't find a modern copy of that film with that title card. Because again, Rambo kind of does an Iran-Contra. It's very odd. It's very weird. But nevertheless, but that also is a thing, when watching this film in particular, is I think one of the things that's impressive about it is that like I said, Roddy McDowall called it a propaganda film. It's not a propaganda film from an ideological standpoint. It's not even about like fighting in the way that the later Lassie films become. It's more so a film that at its core, its message is about survival and its message is about holding on to hope
Mm-hmm.
in a
And
way that is
decency, I think, is a big
yeah,
aspect of
yeah.
it too, because Lassie wouldn't have survived if it wasn't for the kindness of the people she encounters along the way. I mean, especially when with the contrasting elements of the guys with the sheep, how one guy's like, "Oh yeah, kill that dog, ugh," and the other guy's just like decent. It's like, no, I don't think this dog's going after the sheep. I think the dog's just walking through the field. We shouldn't do this. And if it was up to Satan's owner and Satan, Lassie wouldn't have survived. But also because this other guy was a decent guy. If it wasn't for the kindness of the two old people, if it wasn't for the kindness of that, I don't even know what you would call him, the huckster that's just doing dog tricks, from village to village. If it wasn't for his kindness of like, yeah, let's give this dog food. This looks like a good dog, and I could probably make some money off this dog, but you know what? It's still a good dog.
Mm-hmm.
And also, what I think a lesser movie would have done is make the rich guy like a comical villain and make it like you want Lassie to get away from him. And what this movie does isn't so much you want Lassie to get away from him, is just you want Lassie to get back to Roddy McDowall. And the fact that he's just kind of like this comically blustery guy, and he's always railing out his help, and he's got this cute relationship with his granddaughter, and then at the end he's just like, yeah, I know this is Lassie, but you know what, keep the dog. The dog made a trek that most soldiers couldn't have made. Keep the goddamn dog.
Yeah.
I love
and he has a
his
job, by
little-
the way.
I love his little like Miracle on 34th Street wink to Elizabeth Taylor. It makes me
Mhm.
so
It's
happy.
it's definitely propaganda in that effect, because the world is not good and nice and hopeful, but it's making its case that if it was, unimaginable journeys like this could be possible if we just treated strangers with the kindness we would want to be treated with.
yeah,
It's simple, it's
aspirational.
hokey, yeah, it's aspirational, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the kind of messaging I don't want to say is lost now, but it was definitely lost in movies for a while, because we talk about the big revolution of cinema in the 70s, and rightfully so. It resurrected the industry after nonstop 3.5 hour musicals, but the 70s were cynical. And, a lot of that's due to the 60s were such a horrible time, so much tragedy. Then these movies were coming out in the 70s where literally every movie was just like, oh, they don't win. Oh, they die. The most uplifting movie of the 70s is Rocky, and it's about how it's actually good to lose. It's like, so even like the Bad News Bears, it's like, oh, those little foul-mouthed kids, they've learned how to become a team. Guess what? They lose. And we, it would have been easy, and at the time in the 40s, in the midst of a war coming right off, still probably dealing in many parts of the country with a Great Depression in America, to be nihilistic and cynical about the decency of the world around us, with the news coming in from Europe. But for this movie, it kind of shows that when the world is at its worst, I think people do want positivity. They want stories that say it will get better. Like,
Yeah.
you will get stranded with a rich guy in Scotland, but if you put your nose to the grindstone, and if the rest of the world is decent, we can pull anything off. And I think that's, sure, it's propaganda, but it's the kind of propaganda we want, and not, Birth of a Nation or Triumph of the Will style propaganda.
I mean, it speaks to, like, again, to bring it into the Western of it all. I in adulthood became very fond of the Lone Ranger stuff. The old serials and everything. And I think part of it is because, I think about the fact that, like, my grandfather told me when he was stationed in Germany during the Korean War. To be clear, I always have to clarify that so people don't, still was dicey, but it was not like he was, when the stuff was gonna. But when he was stationed in Germany, he loved kind of going to the theater, and they were still playing those Lone Ranger pictures, and the audience was like half adults, right? Mind you, these were dubbed in German. He tells this all the time because he had to try and figure out what the hell was going on, and anytime the Lone Ranger comes up, he always goes, "Wie geht's, Tonto?" But nevertheless, talked about like you could see, even though it's like for children, when John Reed talks about, I use silver bullets as a reminder that life is precious. That silver is precious, a reminder that life is precious. He says, like, you saw adults in the crowd get emotional from it, right? I think why Lassie Come Home resonates is that when you're a kid, of course you relate to Roddy McDowall, but as Tom alluded, as an adult, you can connect to Elsa Lanchester, you can connect to Donald Crisp, you can connect to these adults from the feeling of like, it's not, a cynical movie. As Tom's saying, a cynical movie would be about like, man, the depression, the economy is so bad, we have to sell the dog, right? And then you get to watch them kind of on their journey go, did we have to sell the dog? Like, could we have found another way? Is it worth having, a nicer pot of stew if we don't have the dog? And I think films like this, the reason they resonate with adults as well is it's a reminder of, there's kind of this, for any of us as we, grow, there's this growth that happens. When you're a kid, you're optimistic, right? When you're a child, there is this whimsy and the world is inherently good. And then when you become kind of a teenager, it flips. You learn about some real bad stuff and you get really cynical about the state of the world. And I think so often people maybe get stuck in that mindset, even into adulthood, of this idea of like, well, everything's terrible. You just got to keep your, head down and grind through. And a movie like this, especially at the time it came out, serves as a reminder of, well, no, there's reason to be hopeful. Not necessarily even because, the world is inherently good, so much as we can all work to make things better. We can all strive for this. If this dog can do what it did, how can we say that we can't do better? And I think that's what kind of resonates cross-generationally about this character, even if it does eventually get reduced to what's that girl, Timmy fell down a well. Like, at its core, it speaks to something that I even as animal owners in any way, I mentioned our cat up top, and Tom alluded to having dogs. This strange thing that happens when you're an adult, and you have an animal in your life, and you discover that your animal has been enduring something, right, or doing something that you didn't know. We, I mentioned our cat. We lived in a not so great Brooklyn apartment for a while, and every morning we would kind of wake up, and the cat would be just energetic and frantic, and you want to have your coffee. You're just like, all right, man, calm down. I get it. We're up. One day, I come upstairs a little earlier and I find out there had been a mouse problem in our building. And every morning for hours, this cat had been like chasing all these mice out and kind of getting into these little scraps, and we had no idea. And it's this strangely humbling experience, even now, where you look at it and you're like, you want to look at this animal that you've kind of been brushing off and go like, I didn't realize kind of how much you were suffering, right? Or how much you were struggling. And that to me is what makes, you alluded up top, Hunter, about like the inherent kind of, and correctly so, but like the inherent hokiness of these people in town being like, oh, this dog. But that's what makes the ending kind of hit so hard for me, is that at the beginning of the movie, Lassie waiting every day for Roddy McDowall in school is viewed by the town as like, what a cute trick this dog does. And in the end, when this limping, wounded dog is walking to the school and everybody just kind of solemnly nods
Hmm.
at this realization that, like, no, this isn't a dog doing a trick. This is a being motivated by love and affection, is such a, to me, just hits you like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, the connection is. I mean, I think you genuinely feel it between Lassie and Roddy McDowall's character, and yeah, the ending. Now, I'm not someone. I don't get emotional during movies,
Mhm.
and this didn't quite get me there. But I was like, this is moving. Like I can see why this has been a tearjerker, for such a long time, because it really works, especially like you're seeing. I mean, so many movies, the ending is just like the beginning, basically, like the upside down version of the beginning. Like at the beginning, Lassie comes to the school and he's in like peak condition, and now you're seeing him at the end in his lowest condition, but still being there because of his connection with this kid. And I do think that it is affecting.
I think
I wanted. Oh, sorry, yeah, go on, Tom.
well, no, because latching on to what we've been talking about, I was thinking about this watching the movie. I think a big element, especially because in contrast to the last episode we recorded, which was Badlands, watching this made me think about. I think an element that helped this connect in such a big way, even beyond all the stuff we've been talking about thus far, is that I think this is sort of like a signal shift in kind of a dog culture. I think for so long dogs were seen as just sort of like instruments for farming or like protecting the house or whatever, and people didn't they cared about their dogs, but it'd be like, all right, you sleep outside now, or like if the dog showed any issues, you just shoot the dog, put it in a bag, and throw it in the river. That's why, like we talk like Badlands, there's a scene where to punish his daughter, Warren Oates just shoots her dog and throws it
Mm.
over a bridge into a river. And this sort of signals a shift in the way, maybe not everywhere, but because there's still farms and everything, but like there's a shift, I think, in the way people start actually viewing their pets. Dogs in particular at the time, I think cats took a little longer to get to this place with people, but dogs in particular becoming like such like important emotional parts of a family, especially a family with young kids, which allows the kid to have this just little furry maniac, this lovable little furball that just unconditionally loves and wants to protect this kid and can grow with this child. And by the transitive property, the parents then connect to this dog, because when the kid's at school, the parents are with the dog and they have this relationship. My parents, I'd say my last dog I got with my parents, she died over the last summer, and she basically became like my mom's best friend because all the kids are grown up. My dad is retired, but he's doing stuff around the house or whatever, and blah blah. It's like she, for the longest time, her kids were in school, moved out. She had this dog, and I don't think that was the case for a long time, but by around this time, I think that's why people started connecting to it. Because like, yeah, we love our dogs more than just it being a tool for our farming, for our business, for what have you. It's now like actually a part of the family, and I think that element can't be escaped,
Hmm.
honestly.
I mean, I think some of that is to do with the Depression as well. I mean, a lot of this, we're in 41 when the book is written, 43, when the film comes out. But at its core, our relationship to animals and our relationship to pets is so often a situation where, and again, I say this as a cat owner, not a dog owner, but, uh, there's something both frustrating and tender about the fact that you can buy $100 bed for this cat, and they will still choose to sit in a cardboard box that your Amazon shipment came in. Um, and it's a bit of pets kind of, especially like I said, in a Great Depression setting, they serve as a humbling thing in a way, because while you're caught up in the minutia of, well, we won't have the nicest car, or well, we won't be able to, we'll have to move to a smaller house, or we'll have to go here, or we'll have to go there. Your dog doesn't care how many channels are on your television. Your dog doesn't care if you move to a smaller apartment. Your dog, you can toss them table scraps and they'll be content. And that is not to suggest that you should not economically want more for yourself. But when you are in a jam, when you are in a tight thing, that unconditional love of a pet can kind of encourage you to find an unconditional love within yourself. Lassie's journey brings this family together in a way that they were unable to see before that. And yes, of course, some of it has like the real Hollywoodified, well, I came to offer you a job and all of that. Of course, that certainly helps when somebody offers you a job. But it's a humbling that Lassie brings, and a sense of resilience that I think was so powerful for its time, and I think is the kind of thing that will allow a film like this to have some degree of immortality and resonance, no matter how much time elapses. Before we wind down, I did want to share, we don't often end up pulling up quotes from reviews of the time, and especially I'm often not quick to evoke Bosley Crowther, who could sometimes be a bit nasty. And so when I saw that Bosley Crowther wrote a review of Lassie Come Home, I was kind of prepared for the snootiest of snootiness. But I just want to read how he reviewed the film. Bosley Crowther said, "The Radio City Music Hall should be filled with young folks these next few weeks. Young folks and their wistful elders who still pulse to the joys and sorrows of youth. For the picture which opened there yesterday tells the story of a boy and a dog, tells it with such poignance and simple beauty that only the hardest heart can fail to be moved. Lassie Come Home is the title of this new Technicolored film based upon a novel by the late Eric Knight and produced by Metro in a manner which leaves nothing to be desired. Oftentimes, animal pictures make the unhappy mistake of attributing almost human rationalization to simple four-footed beasts. An outstanding virtue of this picture is that it does nothing of the sort. It treats the dog as an animal whose loyalty is all the more wondrous and appealing because it is simple and free of human wile." I don't always agree with the man's takes, God bless him, but when he cooked, that man could cook. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, can't really disagree there, honestly.
Yeah,
for sure.
So, winding down as we always do, Tom, how do you think Lassie Come Home fared at the Academy Awards that year?
Well, it was spoiled in the statement that it got a nomination, so I'm going to go for shot in the dark and say it was nominated for one Oscar, and my guess for that Oscar is cinematography.
Correct. So it was not nominated for Best Picture. If you wanted a sense of the time, and we were talking about the wartime setting of this, the nominees for Best Picture that year were For Whom the Bell Tolls, Heaven Can Wait, but not the Warren Beatty one. I always have to clarify. The Human Comedy in Which We Serve, Madame Curie, The More the Merrier. Here's one up your alley, Hunter. The Oxbow Incident.
Wonderful movie.
What a movie.
Just as upbeat a film as Lassie Come Home. The other nominees, Song of Bernadette, Watch on the Rhine, and the winner, Casablanca.
I mean, hard to
Lassie
argue
Come
that,
Home was nominated for Best Cinematography Color. This is when it was divided between black and white and color.
Mm-hmm.
And it lost to The Phantom of the Opera. The Universal Claude Rains Phantom of the Opera.
Honestly, can't be mad at that either. That's a gorgeous looking movie. It's gorgeous.
Just one of those things where you kind of sit back, at least for me when I was doing my prep, I'm like, wow, Lassie got nominated for cinematography. I mean, I'm sure it lost to a more prestigious film.
No.
Okay, the Oscars used to be cool.
It lost to a Universal horror movie. Yeah.
It's like when you find out Batman Forever was nominated for cinematography. You're just like, what do you mean that happened? That doesn't square with...
Were there other
reality,
movies released that year? Were there no other movies released in the year of 1995?
Hunter, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Yes, thank you so
for this
much.
Oh yeah,
program.
for sure.
This was very cool. As I
Tolerating my
alluded up
bullshit.
top,
Oh,
as
I did want to say real
yeah,
quick about the
please,
cinematographer,
yeah,
Leonard Smith.
yeah.
He went on to shoot. He shot, of course, Lassie Come Home. He
Mhm.
shot National Velvet, Courage of Lassie, and The Yearling. So he kind of became MGM's animal
Animal guy. Yes,
DP. Yeah.
yeah. And Yearling, I might be wrong. I think the kid from the Yearling is in the Painted Hills, the last
Oh,
MGM
okay.
Lassie movie. If you haven't seen it, it's public domain, so you can watch that anywhere. I'm not saying you should, to be clear. It's not great, but if you're curious, the Painted Hills is available literally everywhere.
Yeah, and one more thing I'm going to
Yeah,
work
please.
in. So Elizabeth Taylor and Roddy McDowall, they of course met on this production and were friends until McDowall died. I think in '98, and I think in one of the I watched all of the like TCM intro and outros to this
Oh,
movie I could
nice,
find,
nice.
and I think Alicia Malone in hers said that Elizabeth Taylor was actually at his bedside when he died.
Wow.
But they were both in the White Cliffs of Dover the following year.
Mhm.
Although I think Elizabeth Taylor is just an uncredited small role in that, and they were both in Cleopatra, which is 20
Yeah.
years after this. And McDowell was a photographer, and he shot Elizabeth Taylor's Playboy spread, which was in 1963. And I figured that info had to be shared because I think that will get the most listeners to Google search afterwards.
That's I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm so glad you told me that because it's like
He's also glad you
knowing that
told
Roddy
him
McDowell.
while the wife isn't home.
Well, that's
Yes.
true. That's true. That's that is one of those things. I will just cop to this because that's the twist is that there's a minor anecdote, but the future missus and I were at a vintage store and they had a rack of vintage Playboys, right? And I saw a cover and I picked one up and I said, I think I have to get this. And she goes, why do you want to buy like a magazine of old naked women? And I said, I swear to you, it's not for the women, hun. This is the magazine where Jimmy Carter says he committed adultery of the heart many times. And I just need to have that as a history nerd. And she looked at me with such disappointment. I think she wished I had gone, I want to look at the naked ladies, as opposed to like, no, you see, back in the 70s, Jimmy Carter gave an interview. It almost tanked his campaign, but of course, Gerald Ford lost that one. I don't know why she wants to marry me.
I was at a bookstore. I used to live in LA, and I was at a bookstore that had like vintage Playboy magazines, and there was one that had an interview with Sam Peckinpah.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't want to buy it. I felt weird buying it, but I really wanted to read the interview, and so I sat in there and I tried to read it, and the owner was just like, "Hey, you can't just sit in here and look at this magazine." And I was like, "I'm only reading the Sam Peckinpah interview, and then I'm done." And he was just like, okay.
Listen, pal. I bet you haven't heard this before, but I read it for the articles.
Yeah.
I'm sure that went over well.
Yeah.
But no, you tell me the Roddy McDowall thing. If just because like there is this fascinating through line of guys with a similar vibe, who go on to photograph a lot of nude women because that was what Harold Lloyd did after he stopped making films. Harold Lloyd
yeah.
famously like took a bunch of nude photography, and then later, post Roddy McDowall, that was also Leonard Nimoy's thing. So it's weird that there's this through line of like genteel nerd guys in cinema history who were also like, yeah, but once I hit my 50s, I've got a Polaroid. I've got some ideas. It's an oddly specific thing. I wonder if there was any crossover between Lloyd and McDowall.
It is
maybe
it is a noble dream to have, honestly. For,
that's how all genteel actors retire. But Hunter, thank you so much for joining us.
This was fantastic.
Really
man.
cool.
Thank you.
I think I had listened to about 3 episodes of your show when I reached out to you, and I really enjoyed it, and I have only grown to enjoy it even more since. I think
awesome!
Such care and appreciation put into your program that I highly recommend folks check it out. But if you want, well, not if you Not if you want. This is the plug section. So if you don't want to plug what you do, it's going to be an awkward couple of minutes. But please tell the folks listening about Tumbleweeds and TV Cowboys and what you do on the program.
Sure. So it is a classic Western film and TV podcast. And each week, myself and a guest will either talk about a movie or a TV show. And I'm really focusing on the 30s through the 60s. And I have like a number of like reoccurring guests. Like I have one guest who I'm going through John Wayne's filmography with. And then I have another guest who I'm going through the first season of Gunsmoke with. And I just, honestly, the main reason I started the podcast is because there were just a number of people who I knew had like a very specific area of expertise within the Western genre. And I was just like, I really want to talk to these people. And I'm very lucky I've had like most of them on the show so far. But I think even for people who maybe aren't super interested in Westerns, I think that there are some episodes that even if you're just a fan of classic movies, you could probably enjoy. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Just quick question before we go. Since you said mostly through the 30s, through the 60s, but you are doing a John Wayne series. Will you be covering The Shootist? Because
we will be going through The Shootist. Yes, so with John Wayne, we will be going up through his final movie, and then even another friend of mine, he and I are starting to go through Clint Eastwood's Hollywood westerns.
Okay, yeah.
I am kind of staying away from some westerns that are like huge and have been written about and talked about a lot. I'm trying to get into a little more like underseen westerns. I've still talked about huge westerns. I mean, the Oxbow incident we've covered. I'm trying to think of the other, and there will be other big ones. That's the biggest movie that's coming to my mind off the top of my head. I'm sure we'll cover tons of them. I mean, since I'm going through John Wayne's filmography, obviously The Searchers will happen.
Some of the biggest, obviously.
Yeah. But then like people, a number of people, some people have actually reached out and said like, hey, I want to talk about The Wild Bunch. And I'm kind of like, well, this has already been done so much and so well. I don't really know if I can contribute anything. So I am trying to dig in a little bit more into the underseen stuff.
I mean, I will say for people like, you said people who don't even necessarily love Westerns, one of the things, and I think one of the things that you help illustrate with your show is the way that, like, quite frankly, if you are a fan of American media in the 20th century, you have to understand the Western genre and its impact.
Oh yeah.
It's we always talk about it on this show, but like Star Trek was pitched as Wagon Train in space.
Yeah.
Right. My partner and I, who I've alluded to, we took a trip at my behest. This will shock you. This was not her idea, but we took a trip to go see Zane Grey's home, where he wrote Riders of the Purple Sage and all of his great Western novels.
Yeah.
And my argument in favor of it was we read together Riders of the Purple Sage, and I was trying to convey, like, when people think of like the 20s and 30s, right, they assume everybody in America had, The Great Gatsby and Ulysses on their walls because that's what's been canonized. But the reality is, like, the majority of Americans were reading Zane Grey novels. He was the Stephen King of his time. This was like the massive bestseller. And you kind of can't understand the evolution of American mass media without understanding Zane Grey's place in it, even though nobody outside of Western fans necessarily know the name Zane Grey anymore. When we went up to his house, the park ranger there saw two young people and went, "So, would you like me to tell you a bit about who Zane Grey was?" And I had to go, No, she bought me a first edition for my birthday. I've got a couple of the books, and so it's a little
Yeah.
bit weird to kind of go, no, I know I've read some of his baseball novels, but you really do need that foundation, and I think that's why it's great. Not only that you have the show, but that you do dip into these kind of, in some cases, like forgotten but foundational westerns.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to cover some of the early Zane Grey adaptations, because in maybe 1931 or 32, there's several that I think Henry Hathaway directed that star Randolph Scott.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of like his early movies. And so, yeah. And of course, there's the Zane Grey Theater, which was a show that I think maybe Dick Powell, I think, directed quite a few of those episodes. But yeah, that's something I'd like to get into.
Not entirely extant, that show. I have like a DVD collection of a lot of them, those episodes, but I think it ran for like 5 seasons, and some of those episodes are lost to time, including one. Tom's going to get mad that I'm bringing him up here because he hadn't come up all episode, including one that, hand to God, co-stars Ron and Nancy Reagan from like season 5. It's like the only time they appeared on screen together besides Hellcats of the Navy.
Okay.
I just can't escape the Reagan stuff. I can't escape it.
It's unbelievable. You can't. It's my weird fascination.
But
who also played Frame Johnson in Frontier Marshal.
I don't care about
that.
I care about westerns,
okay,
and anybody talking about westerns is a-okay in my book. I love them; they are foundational. So many movies today are just westerns, but without the horses. There's so many of them. You could find so many gems. I love them. I brought up The Shootist because I watched it not too long ago, and it knocked my socks off.
I love it. Yeah,
it's an amazing movie. You said you're doing a Clint Eastwood series. I just bought. They put out a few 4Ks of some of his movies recently, so I rewatched Pale Rider in 4K. Unbelievable! What a great movie. He's my guy. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is my favorite movie of all time. Mike knows it. I talk about it all the time. So westerns, it's only a close number 2 to horror in my world, but I mean, you just can't go wrong with a good western, especially either American or Italian, because the Italian westerns tend to be pretty fucking psychotic. They're pretty nutty, and I love them. Italians are weird, and they're great, and I love them. But yes, pro western. Listen to the show. Everybody needs more westerns in their lives. So yes.
And
thank you.
So Hunter, thank you so much for joining us once again, and we hope to have you back on the program, in a future season, whether that be for a western or not. Maybe by that point you will be sick of talking about westerns. Maybe you'll be like, get me as far from that as possible. Get me something with cars. Who knows? But we're so appreciative of you coming on, and thank you so much for joining us. But everybody else, stick around. We'll be right back with our picks for the National Film Registry.
The National Film Registry isn't some fixed object, frozen in time. It's always growing, adding new titles every year. These annual selections are made by the National Film Preservation Board, with members like Martin Scorsese, Alfre Woodard, and Leonard Maltin, and representatives from organizations like the Academy, the DGA, and the AFI coming together to debate and decide. But they don't just pull titles out of thin air. They pull from the public, people like you and us, who can submit their nominations for the registry in a form on the Library of Congress's website. What we do, at the end of each episode, is have Mike and Tom pick films not yet in the registry that they feel should be, inspired by that day's topic. At the end of each season, those films will be formally submitted to the National Film Registry for consideration, on behalf of You're Missing Out. Here are today's picks.
Okay, so a lot of different ways you could go with this one. And the easy one you can go with, which is what I went, is the dog angle. And I wanted to find a dog movie, something that really can, gets to the nitty-gritty of what it's like being a dog owner and loving dogs, and that specific world of dog ownership, and the way the dog ownership has changed over time. And as much as the characters in Lassie Come Home love Lassie, the way life back then, it just does not measure up to the way it is now. That there is a specific subculture to dog ownership. It's almost a big business. I feel like I'm just not even gonna keep trying to hide it now. I'm going for Best in Show. Why even play the long game? It's just funny to say. I'm saying Best in Show. Um, one of the funniest movies of the last 30 years, and very specifically about how dog owners can be weird. They can be weird. There is a very weird subculture of the dog ownership that is that goes beyond loving your dog as if it's a part of your family and turning it into this weird business competition thing. And it's absolutely amazing. One of the funniest fucking movies. A lot of good dogs. You got Fred Willard asking, how much do you think he could bench press? I don't think this works as a double feature, but fuck it. I'm saying Best in Show because I'm connecting the dogs. The dogs. We love dogs. So Best in Show from Christopher Guest. How long has it been since I got you to react like that with a pick?
It was because the build-up. I was
And then
so
I just quit?
prepared, but it was the build-up made it sound like you were about to, like, the special understanding between people and their dogs, and I'm like, what deeply dramatic Togo-esque movie is he about to pull? It's like I'm expecting like fucking Harry and Tonto or some shit. That's a cat, but you know what I'm saying? Like some like, well,
Yeah.
an old man and his dog survive in the and
Then I just give up and I just.
all right. Let me get.
I gotta mute because now I'm gonna laugh.
So I also went with the dog angle. I'm kind of surprised in a way. I was looking at some other things. At one point, I considered the most obvious parallel, which is The Incredible Journey, the Disney film from the time. I thought of other animal movies, a film that I will at some point put up for the registry, films like Misty, things like that. But, we're talking about Lassie. Lassie is probably the definitive dog star. But as I alluded in the episode, there were others before Lassie, Rin Tin Tin and Strongheart, both of whom were represented in the registry. But what you might not know, what a lot of folks might not know, is that there was a dog movie star before any of them. And the original dog movie star comes from Brooklyn, New York. That's right. A lot of people have not heard of them. But Gene the Vitagraph dog was the original dog movie star. Gene, the Vitagraph dog from Vitagraph Studios in Brooklyn, which the studio is obviously no longer there. It got turned into luxury apartments that I could not afford. And apparently, when you try and get an apartment in that building, if you tell them, I know about Gene the Vitagraph dog, that does not make them any more inclined to rent to you. Just a fun fact for you guys. But Gene the Vitagraph dog was the original dog movie star. These are short films, and the very first Gene film is lost. It's lost to time. But the second is the one I'm putting up for the registry. This is from 1910, called Gene the Matchmaker. What you see from Gene the Vitagraph dog is not what you'll end up seeing with Lassie. There's a very rudimentary training for this dog. It's simple stunts, it's simple tricks, but nevertheless, the audience was so endeared to Gene. Gene, Gene the dog, or Gene the Vitagraph dog, really paved the way for the dog movie star, for the animal movie star. Gene is kind of that bridge between, before that, we certainly have films that show animals doing tricks. But you don't watch Edison's Boxing Cats and find yourself endeared to any of the cats as characters. These are just animal tricks. But Gene is kind of the first movie animal that you connect to as having a personality. So I think if Rin Tin Tin is in, if Strongheart is in, if Lassie is in, I think we have to go all the way back to kind of the the OG dog movie star. And especially considering how many Gene the Vitagraph Dog films are, as of now, lost to time, I think it's extra important to preserve what we can. And that means starting with Gene the Matchmaker from 1910, which is my nomination for the National Film Registry.
Next week,
Patrick Kottner returns to the show to talk about The Godfather Part 2 and also Ewok's Caravan of Courage.
Sure. In the second one, you get the giant from Twin Peaks and you get the witch lady. And you get a bunch of guys in masks, which I feel like this movie is severely lacking. This movie that I want to remind you, I did not watch for this.
You're Missing Out is a production of Neon Night Media. It's hosted by Mike Natale and Tom Lorenzo. The show is produced by Kyle Lampar and edited by Mike Natale and Kyle Lampar. More information about our hosts and guests are in the show notes. Thank you to Amanda Rush for our social media, and all of you for checking us out.
If you're listening right now or want to take the show on the go, every episode is available as an audio podcast. Follow You're Missing Out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, please leave a review and a rating. It helps folks find the show.
Want to watch the show or watch some of the films along with us? Great, that's why we're doing this. Don't leave us alone out here. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got video versions of every episode, uploads of some of the National Film Registry titles we're discussing, commentary tracks, and live streams. And once a month, I'll be uploading some content that's exclusive to the YouTube channel. So be sure to click subscribe and hit that little bell to be notified as soon as new stuff goes up. Because, let's be fucking real, I ain't sticking to a goddamn schedule.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
And we'll see you next time.
And you'll see us next time. Because we don't watch you, you're watching us.